I'm Heidi Pickett, Chief of Staff and SVP of Strategic Initiatives here at the TIE, and I am excited to be joined by John, Chief Business Officer, and Morgan, Head of Institutions and Capital Markets, both from Avalabs for our Q3 2024 quarterly State of Avalanche call. We have a lot to cover today, several topics around Avalanche and the broader ecosystem. We're going to talk about platform upgrades, institutional gaming and DeFi verticals, some highlights from last quarter, and a look ahead to the second half of 2024. We're going to assume that our audience has the baseline awareness of the Avalanche blockchain and key differentiators, but if not, please feel free to catch replays of our past quarterly webinars or reach out to John or Morgan to learn more. And finally, a note that the information contained in this webinar is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice. Okay, with that out of the way, welcome John and Morgan. Super excited to be able to speak with you today. Let's kick it off with some platform upgrades over the past quarter. So Avalanche underwent a major upgrade with Teleporter, now named ICTT, Avalanche's native interoperability solution. So for those that may have missed it, what is Teleporter and why is this important to Avalanche?
Well, first things first, Heidi, thanks for having us. It's always great to be with the TIE and to talk about all the great things that are happening within the Avalanche ecosystem. So first things first, Teleporter, or ICTT, is a messaging protocol that's built on top of Avalanche Warp messaging, which is kind of a communications protocol that was built that provides a developer-friendly interface so people can send and receive messages across all the EVM chains in the ecosystem. So it makes Avalanche a completely interoperable blockchain network where any Avalanche L1, previously called subnets, within the network can exchange and interact with one another. So pretty much it's an easy way to transfer tokens from one Avalanche L1 to another. Think token bridge contracts, but we don't like to use the word bridge because it's not a multi-sig and it's more than just transferring tokens. In essence, it's a drive towards a future where you can swap assets between chains, hopefully as easily as you can swap files between folders on your computer.
Heidi, I would maybe just add a little bit more to that. And also thank you for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you every quarter, and it's crazy that we're here again. I feel like time really flies.
It does. It does.
But as it relates to ICTT, it's this protocol is built on top of Avalanche Warp messaging, which I know we've talked about in these sessions a lot, and it really and we'll kind of go into this in further detail later on. But it really kind of is a pivotal piece to kind of the target state vision of the network, which was always this kind of network of natively interoperable and customizable networks. And kind of practically what that means, John mentioned kind of transferring tokens from chain to chain, including C chain, which is a liquidity hub, to any given L1 within the Avalanche network and back, or within two kind of L1s within the network overall. It's not necessarily just kind of tokens. It can ultimately be kind of any arbitrary message. So think about things like data oracle feeds, as well as messages around pinging someone, whether someone has been KYC'd or not, trade RFQs and confirms from an institutional standpoint. So it's really, I think we're really excited, and we'll talk about this to kind of demonstrate the capabilities of different teams actually leveraging the tech. And importantly, I would also note the fact that it really enables teams to build L1s without having to bootstrap a lot of things that you would think about having to bootstrap when starting your own ecosystem. So rather than having to kind of think about how do I get native USDC on my chain, do I have to contract a circle, and what does that timing look like? You can pull in USDC natively from our liquidity hub from the C chain. Same thing again with data and frankly users and other types of token liquidity as well. So it really is like an enabler in terms of really helping to kind of grow the broader L1 ecosystem within Avalanche as well.
Nice. I think that's a great lead into the next question, which is around the Avalanche Foundation supporting developer grant program for those that are building with Teleporter. So, what projects are planning on using it? What projects are using it now, and which ones are using it in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think the foundation's mission is to, grow the adoption. And when there's a new technology, a new update, we're very eager to support those that want to use it. It's the best feedback we have that tells us what's working, what can be better, what can we do better. and how we can utilize this, right? The best kind of, I guess, marketing you can say is projects using it and proliferating that adoption. So there's grants available for that. We want to support the people using this new technology. Numerous verticals are utilizing this. Currently, Lamina One is one of the first that's using it. Lamina One is a project led by Neil Stephenson, the iconic author of Snow Crash. They're building a kind of metaverse digital platform for digital creators, people who create content, in particular IP. So there's a lot of use cases that can be used there. 01 is also using it. 01 does kind of digital collectible trading. So they've graduated from being an application to having their own chain, and they're getting tremendous uptake in users and traction. And then Gogopool is also going to be using it for their clients. Gogopool runs a ton of validators for the network. They're helping bootstrap validators and probably one of the largest infrastructure providers. And they're going to be very critical to helping launch Avalanche L1s.
Nice. And then this past quarter, the community's really been talking about ACP, Avalanche Community Proposal 77. Why is this a big deal for the future of Avalanche? And what is sort of behind this particular proposal?
Morg, you want to kick this one off?
Sure. So I would say the kind of mainnet / in production launch of Teleporter is formerly Teleporter. ICTT is a huge and kind of pivotal component of ACP 77. There's a few others that kind of fit within that broader proposal that really will enable truly sovereign chains within the broader Avalanche network. So the kind of biggest upgrade from that perspective is really the removal of the staking requirement that was a feature of the network from the beginning, and something I think to John's point, hearing feedback from developers and builders, both from the startup side of things all the way through to the kind of large regulated institutional side of things, and really kind of meeting the market where it's at and really enabling this truly sovereign network. So what that means is historically, if you were a validator validating, again, formerly known as a subnet or an Avalanche L1, you also had a requirement to validate the primary network, which included the C chain or the public permissionless chain, liquidity hub, whatever you want to call it. We found and heard from a variety of, especially founders, that this ended up being a pretty prohibitively expensive requirement. And then from an institutional standpoint, especially with respect to banks, they ultimately weren't able to do that because from a regulatory standpoint, they're not at a place where they're able to validate public permissionless networks. And so one of the key kind of components of ACP 77 essentially gets rid of that requirement and effectively introduces kind of pay as you go model, where your fees from an Avalanche standpoint really are commensurate with how widely used your particular L1 is, and how much adoption and transactions that it garners and requires. And so through that, it dramatically reduces the cost of launching your own L1, and again, from a regulatory standpoint, addresses that hurdle. But importantly, still preserves the ability to maintain this kind of intra-network interoperability, because still all the validators within the broader network are still at least registered on the P chain, which is the thing that basically enables this kind of intra-network communication and connectivity. John, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to.
Yeah, I think taking a step back and looking at this is a very big deal for us. It's, I think, a very big deal for the network, and I think for the broader kind of crypto and Web3 ecosystem. This is kind of the final leg, I think, of the Avalanche white paper and the vision that was set out years ago, right? So we've consistently been building towards that future that was kind of outlined in the beginning. But I will caveat it with, I think we see this in this space a lot. People are either very stuck to like the words of a white paper as if they're gospel. You can't deviate. You can't change. It's like, I'm going to build a treehouse, right? I want to make an upgrade. I'm going to build a treehouse. I take the measurements. I take 2 years to build that treehouse. and then I go to plug it into the tree. Well, the tree has grown, it's changed. And people in this space are kind of dogmatic when it comes to like the way they look at things. The Avalanche white paper set out a vision. We've been working towards that vision, but along the way, we've gotten feedback from enterprises, from institutions, from builders that one, it's too expensive to launch a subnet for us. It's too expensive to innovate and take a chance. The initial upfront cost is just too large. Now that was actually beneficial for us because we were able to launch up to 50 subnets currently, take time to optimize what a subnet needs, what it could do. So we came in first with the ones that could afford it. We optimized for them, learned a lot, and now we're able to drop that barrier and really unleash the ability of innovation to happen and grow from there with a much cheaper cost or operating expense for those builders and those innovators. And it registers, like Morgan said, on the P chain. So the P chain really becomes kind of a blockchain of blockchains. It's like the library of blockchains that has that connectivity. And instead of locking AVAX, you're burning AVAX. So we think that's probably going to be a better thing for the network. Additionally, on the enterprise and institutional front, right, we're going to have a network that has private permission public, and public permissionless Avalanche L1s on it. Well, these institutions never want to be, or these enterprises never want to be in a situation in which they may or may not be on the wrong side of compliance. And now with this, a certain amount of AVAX is burned. They don't have to hold AVAX. They don't have to hold crypto. A third-party provider like AvaCloud at Avalabs or a Kaleido or anybody else can simply burn the AVAX to run their infrastructure for them and cut them a bill. So think of it as a blockchain as a managed service. They pay a cash bill to run a blockchain that may or may not have a token, depending on what they need, but they don't have to hold a token anymore. They don't have to validate a public permissionless chain. It just unlocks so many use cases that we've been hearing about, that Morgan specifically has been hearing about by so many partners that have been waiting for this moment, that have said, we would love to launch a chain if we didn't have to do this, if this was not the case. So it just makes sense. It makes practical sense to do this for the growth of blockchains, for the growth of interoperability, and a ton of use cases that we're really excited about going into between now and the end of the year. So lots happening.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I definitely can see that we're going to be carrying this conversation on next quarter for sure, and future quarters to come. Morgan, let's turn the direction to institutional a little bit, which I know you are deeply ingrained at Avalanche. So you recently wrote a blog about the growth of asset-backed finance and the growth of private credit markets. So just to level set for anyone tuning in or everyone tuning in, what is asset-backed finance? Why is that market growing? What is the opportunity? And how are you positioned to capture the value from this trend?
That's a lot of questions.
I know, I'm sorry. I know you can handle it, but yeah, that was a lot.
Break it down. So maybe just to take a step back, sitting kind of at an L1 network, John and I, and obviously the whole team, see such a broad range of companies, obviously across different verticals, but even within those verticals, so many, whether they're startups or incumbents, building products and services and applications to drive forward these different use cases, industries, sub-industries, so on and so forth. From a tokenization standpoint, there's a lot of protocols out there that would consider themselves more like kind of generalist marketplaces or generalist platforms where their tech is used to connect asset issuers and investors, or asset supply and demand, or whatever that is, but it's a very generalist platform. At the same time, there's a lot of platforms out there that are kind of vertically integrated, being built by teams in a very particular industry or sub-industry that are building applications to address very specific pain points that that businesses face day to day in whatever industry we're talking about, whether that's like home equity or insurance or supply chain or whatever it is. And so those teams, oftentimes in terms of the ones that we have found that we're working with, come from those industries and are very acutely aware of the particular pain points and the opportunity, and also have an embedded network within that respective area that they come from, and basically migrate to this on-chain world, and therefore are building very specific applications to address whatever that thing is in that particular industry. And so asset-backed finance or specialty finance is kind of represents like a growing cohort of on-chain builders that are addressing pain points in these particular industries. So from an asset-backed finance standpoint, the way that we look at it, it's, refers to kind of lending where the loan is supported first by effectively like the contractual cash flows of a pool of assets, financial or physical, that are owned by the borrower, and then really by the liquidation of those assets themselves. So that market, when you think about it, is significantly larger than kind of like the corporate credit market, which is essentially backed by kind of the full, faith of the corporation and the corporate credit. Examples of kind of asset-backed finance, they're things that are kind of really just, that exist in every day, whether it's mortgages or auto loans and leases and rentals, music and media, royalties, commercial real estate, so on and so forth. So the blog kind of explains and has like a pretty extensive list of examples. So interestingly, and again, kind of taking a step back and looking at the space historically, what we realized was since the great financial crisis, the bank's ability and capacity to directly lend to these types of businesses has significantly reduced as a result of, obviously the global financial crisis, the more restrictive regulatory environment has really kind of shrunk their capacity to lend, as well as the fact that historically a lot of these alternative areas are not really standardized as it relates to the ability to to retain and analyze and rate a lot of the history, the credit history, kind of backing these assets. And so it's just been more cumbersome for banks to be able to more kind of systematically do this and do this at scale. And so what we saw up until Web3 with Web2 is fintechs and a lot of different kind of alternative lenders taking the place of banks. And there were different types of models that kind of have evolved over time that have helped these companies bootstrap kind of their growth and adoption. And so one of the models effectively that we've seen from an alternative asset manager perspective is providing not just debt facilities, but debt and equity financing to really kind of help and drive the growth and adoption of these, these fintechs, these originators. And so now we're kind of seeing the start of the Web3 version of this, where a very selective number of companies who, like alternative asset managers who understand this like traditional fintech model, are now kind of starting to apply it to the Web3 space, the blockchain-enabled space, however you want to call it. And they are finding select opportunities where, again, there's these like vertically integrated platforms that are solving real-world pain points in, again, a whole host of very kind of specific industries, and coming in and providing effectively like venture debt financing plus potentially token upside or getting token upside. And creating really attractive, potentially risk return profiles for their investors, where it's not just standard kind of fixed income exposure, but fixed income plus, equity, potential equity upside. And then with the added benefit of tokens, which introduces like a new dynamic, could make for much more a wider opportunity set, I think, for a lot of these alternative asset managers. So long-winded way of saying this is like a very specific subset of tokenization that we're seeing. But I think it's exciting for me because at the end of the day, it connects to the real world. And it also connects to potentially off-chain capital and off-chain users coming on-chain by nature of the fact that there is really compelling and interesting products and services being built on-chain. So happy to delve into more of that out there.
Yeah, okay. John, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
No comment on any of that. Morgan covered it thoroughly. She even gave me a lesson there, so that's fantastic.
Okay, perfect. Can you tell us a little bit more about some projects like Diamond Standard and Wine Capital Fund and how they're tokenizing luxury goods? what does that look like, in the Avalanche ecosystem? And how do you see this going across, different types of digital assets in that space?
Yeah. So those two were issued in fund form with Oasis Pro Markets as kind of, you can think about them as like the application layer, similar to a Securitize and a Republic and others out there who are these more generalized infrastructures, but they very much focus on like a fund structure. Really the goal is to enable more systematic access both to institutional investors as well as individual investors to different types of assets. So Diamond Standard, obviously exposure to diamonds and their diamond fund, and then wine to wine. And so again, from an issuer standpoint, we're seeing really an interest to tokenize the whole spectrum of assets. What I would say at a high level, what we're seeing in terms of like, how do we group these together? I'd say on the one end, we're seeing a lot of interest in the tokenization of like cash and cash equivalents. So stable coins, tokenized deposits, wholesale CBDCs, yield-bearing stable coins, as well as money market funds. And the goal there is really to target kind of more of a crypto native audience and demand base. Those might be already on chain, who hold non-yield bearing stables, who want to realize potentially greater utility in their underlying and stable assets. So that's kind of that cohort. On the other end of the spectrum, seeing a lot of interest in the tokenization of alternative assets. So asset finance is what we were talking about, fits into that spectrum. And then in between, I would say more like commodities and collectibles, lifestyle assets, however, luxury culture, however you want to call it, assets that actually target a little bit of both in individuals and institutions, just depending on who it is.
Okay, great. And then maybe just kind of close out on the institutional front. So Stripe, the financial payments platform, just integrated as an on-ramp to Avalanche. How do you think this integration affects the broader ecosystem? And are you aware of any projects actively using this integration?
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting development for us. So currently they support on and off ramps from US dollars into AVAX, forthcoming hopefully USDC soon. But 01 is using this. The Arena, which is a SocialFi app, is using this. So think applications both on C-Chain, but as well as Avalanche L1s have direct integrations with Stripe. So a user, particularly with a retail or consumer or mass market app, right? Not the Web3 native people who are like, wait, I have to buy crypto and wait, I have to download a wallet and then buy crypto and then move that crypto. And it's too many steps. But a lot of these applications have custodial wallets built into them, or maybe the ability to connect your non-custodial wallet. You can just on-ramp right in with your credit card, debit card, or whatever it may be through a Stripe widget, and then just have the assets that you need right away to pop into whatever application it may be. So we're seeing this in SocialFi, we're seeing this in like collectibles. Currently, those two are using it. There's a bunch more, so I'm sure I'm going to get messages later saying you didn't mention us. But there's a lot more. They're going to be integrating with a lot more applications, including DeFi and everything else that we have going on. So the gaming aspect is using it. The gaming projects are integrating that as well too. So you could buy in-game assets and skins and all the great stuff there too. So
yeah.
I mean, it really again is like another example of connecting the real world to the on-chain world.
Our unreal world.
Yeah, to the unreal. No, but all that's to say is really trying to lower the barriers to entry, because we all know how frictionful the experience can be, and really working slowly toward the end state, which is really obfuscating away more and more of the blockchain components as we can.
Yeah,
I think it's an important point, because some players in this space are very much dedicated to only being crypto native, right? Self-sovereignty, owning your stuff, don't go through anything. Like, no, the blockchain needs to be front and center. Others are doing the opposite, 180, right? No, we got to put the blockchain in the back. We got to obfuscate everything. Nobody cares, nobody knows. Both of these camps are valid. But you can't get someone from not 0 to 1, but 0 to 10 on the crypto native side without a lot of education and use cases. And some people would be interested. And I think Stripe is a great integration that shows how people can get into this space. So then they can start learning about it and potentially graduate or transition to being more crypto native or blockchain native, right? So this industry hasn't done a good job with building blocks to get people to where we ultimately would like them to be. We've just said, this is the way it should be, and this is the best way it should be for so long. And I think there's a gradual education and an on-ramping into this space for those that want it. And for those that do, they can do that. And for those that don't, at least the curious can now start to delve into some of these great applications.
Yeah, it makes so much sense that we've got to have easier solutions, and this sounds like this is taking the right direction to accomplish that. You just mentioned, gaming also being part of this, maybe the Stripe integration solution, but turning our attention to that vertical. So solo leveling, Webtoon initially released in 2016, accumulated over 14 billion views, now launching an NFT platform on Avalanche. Why do you think they chose Avalanche, and any other popular IP building on your chain that you can disclose and share?
There's a lot. Gaming is important. I think what we're starting to see, and you're seeing it most on Avalanche, is existing IPs and IPs that have been around for a long time, that have a lot of users coming into this space. So we're bringing people into this space. I think for a long time, when Web3 gaming, or whatever you want to call it, first started, play to earn, etc., these are tokens masquerading as games. They were not games. Gamers want, first and foremost, a good game, and they want to be able to play something. And the blockchain element, the Web3 element, is supposed to be additive to that, right? It's supposed to unlock things. It's not supposed to be the feature. In particular, solo leveling is part of a larger protocol called Otherworld that's going to empower IPs to build their own applications, right? They have exclusive Web3 rights to 25 other anime IPs, and them, like everybody else, I would say, chose Avalanche because of the ease of developing on Avalanche, having your own layer 1 blockchain, the speed that comes with that, the lower fees, and the scale that it just provides. So Nexon as well is building MapleStory Universe on their own L1. Konami also announced their own NFT platform for Web3 gaming. Beam, Merit Circle's Beam has a guild with a couple dozen games coming. Shrapnel, Off the Grid, Fableborn, Spellborn. The list is very long. And a lot of these are quality games that have fantastic teams behind them that are building real games for the long term. And a big thing that we're actually seeing, so whether it's Konami or Nexon, we're seeing a lot of this adoption and a lot of innovation come out of Asia, particularly Japan and Korea. Yeah. We're very proud that we have teams both in Japan and Korea leading the charge there across all of our verticals, but especially with the gaming. We spent a lot of time in Korea and Japan, and those companies and the leadership there see the necessity to innovate. Their populations are very tech forward, and they're willing to take on new risks at the company level to enable new user experiences for their players and their users. So a lot of exciting stuff happening.
Great. Anything else you want to add, just in terms of as you're thinking about gaming, GameFi on Avalanche going forward, beyond what we've already captured?
I mean, I would just say it's vindication for us, and it's a validation of the Avalanche L1 thesis that games, particularly things with a lot of users, a lot of transactions, including in finance, but you can expect games to work to proceed and adapt and adopt new technology faster than traditional incumbent financial institutions and large Fortune 500 enterprises. They are more tech forward, they're more nimble, and they show the benefit of having your own layer 1 blockchain, as opposed to maybe an L2 or another scaling solution or a side chain that's still reliant on another chain. So they have their own safety, they have their own security, they have their own environment, they can have their own token, all the benefits of creating your own economy. Every blockchain, in essence, is its own little ecosystem and its own little economy. If you're vying for resources and whatever it may be with another project or payments or NFTs or DeFi, there's always going to be this inherent battle. There's security, there's compliance, there's so many different things. So instead of kind of this push everything through one big pipe mode, or the inverted pyramid of like layer 2s and 3s and so on, we look at it differently. We just fundamentally have a different view of things, that we have a highway, which we started with, first of all, with the C chain, and then we add more lanes to that. And then we all proceed, horizontally together with each kind of lane having its own rule set, right? Just like with a highway, you can do the same here, and each game can have its own chain. And we're seeing that. And we're seeing that proliferation first and foremost on gaming. So it's really exciting to see when these games launch, all the users that they'll bring, the high that transaction counts, I think will be further validation.
Nice. Let's move on to DeFi. So Avalanche Boost just began providing rewards for liquidity providers of DeFi tokens. So, why is Avalanche Foundation providing incentives? What protocols are participating in Boost? How can people get involved?
So for those that have been around the Avalanche ecosystem for a while, I think they'd remember from late 2021, early 2022, the Rush program. And the Rush program was really what first got attention to the Avalanche ecosystem. It brought a lot of Ethereum blue chips over, which helped bring users and liquidity over, and really kickstarted the Avalanche ecosystem, particularly using the C chain. Since about a year and a half ago, the focus has been mostly on expanding the subnet ecosystem and adding more subnets and having that. Well, with ACP77 coming out, with warp messaging happening, with all these things happening, there's a renewed focus on the C chain to be the global liquidity hub, right? So if you have all these different chains, all these different Avalanche L1s with their own tokens, instead of having to integrate those or connect to those, the tokens and assets that live on them can live on the C chain. You can easily move them to the C chain and have the C chain kind of be that liquidity hub where all the trading can happen, and your tokens can all be ERC20s. So with that, we want to boost, or the foundation wants to support boosting more activity, more liquidity in anticipation for what is to come, for all these new chains to launch, for ACP77 to go live, and for all these assets to really proliferate. We want to get kind of the plumbing going again, right? And it's been kind of a quiet year plus, I think, within the market, and the market seems to be turning. Attention is coming back, liquidity is flowing back into the system. So we'd like to incentivize those users who are using the Avalanche ecosystem, who have maybe not been using it recently, to come back and use it, and for new participants to come in and see how easy it is to transact, how quick and cheap it is to transact on Avalanche, and really see what else there is to offer ahead of all the things that we have coming. So I think it's kind of a little bit of an appetizer for larger things to come.
Yeah.
And users that are DeFi curious can go and use Trader Joe, Faro Exchange, Banky, Delta Prime, and GMX to try those out. Have some fun.
Fantastic. And sticking with the Avalanche Foundation, also announced an icebreaker incentive program for up to 500,000 bucks for DeFi protocols, especially liquid staking solutions. So why do you think liquid staking protocols are an emphasis? How do you think these incentives will affect the ecosystem more broadly?
I mean, I would say liquid staking protocols are just a key DeFi primitive, right? It unlocks AVAX liquidity, it's staked to validator nodes. These protocols oftentimes are pretty robust. They have greater network effects that move the ecosystem in general. So it's not really an incentive program. It's just direct liquidity, including more liquidity into the system. But, liquid staking has just been very beneficial to the Avalanche ecosystem, and it's been beneficial to other ecosystems. So we want to support that. Morgan, do you have anything to add there?
No, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think we've seen it within other ecosystems. I mean, it's a kind of key piece, the DeFi and broader ecosystem puzzle. So I would just echo.
Cool. And then there's been some new protocols that have hit the market, including Stablejack, a decentralized yield-bearing stablecoin, and other projects that have seen growth like Celbor and NFT borrow and lending protocol. What new and growing DeFi protocols are on your radar? What's coming out from Codebase, Avalab's accelerator program?
I mean, I think DeFi is kind of broad, right? I think crypto native people look at DeFi specifically as like on-chain trading. I think decentralized finance allows for a lot of different use cases. So I think we're very excited about what Lever is building. They have a leveraged sports betting platform that's actually licensed, so they can take international users. That's pretty cool to allow people to do that. I mentioned earlier the Arena, which has a Stripe integration. It's a top social buy platform across all chains. I think currently it's probably risen to the top, or it's close to being the top one, that provides creators a new way to engage with their audiences and monetize and do a lot of cool stuff. Avant has delta neutral strategies launching on Avalanche. So there's a lot of new stuff always happening. Of course, The existing guys like Trader Joe and Bank are always innovating and providing these stuff. So we're very excited about that. The code base cohort really brought about a lot of innovation with a lot of new builders that we were very proud to support very early on, kind of from idea to inception. So there's Axon that has faster and cheaper crypto on-ramps and payment platform. Inertia is doing decentralized prediction markets. I think we've seen the success of prediction markets currently. So we'd love to have that expand on Avalanche as well. And then Musing is a really cool new project. It's like a Reddit-like social media platform where online communities are owned actually by the members. So think about like if you were to decentralize Reddit, if you were to give Reddit back to the community to have ownership over their own communities within that, or sub-communities or subreddits. It's really exciting.
Nice.
I would maybe just echo a couple of things that John mentioned. I agree, and I think we've always thought DeFi is kind of, especially the primitives, are really like the top of the funnel to a lot of different applications, including obviously things like SocialFi and consumer applications, as well as even gaming to some extent. And then definitely from an institutional standpoint, even though I'm focused on, institutional kind of use cases, I work extremely closely with our DeFi team, because when it comes time to, various types of institutions leveraging the Avalanche ecosystem for their strategies, I mean, that is not a mutually exclusive concept to DeFi. On top of that, we're starting to see, institutional grade infrastructure being built on top of to leverage the DeFi primitives out there, like August, which is one of Blizzard portfolio companies that's building basically institutional grade, like prime brokerage type infrastructure on chain. So it's really these like building blocks that have and continue to kind of build and innovate within the broader Avalanche ecosystem. And I'd like to think that we've always kind of drawn and attracted like really good and smart builders, I think, to the space, who have a lot of expertise in traditional financial services, whether it's within derivatives or structured products or other things that are really bringing that kind of knowledge to bear through different types of protocols on Avalanche. So all very exciting, and definitely looking forward to it, especially with the kind of the build out of L1s.
Yeah. Maybe we focus a little bit more on the broader strategy. So we probably touched upon this a little bit in the discussion already, but what's the overall growth strategy for the ecosystem? It's a big question, but
it's a question.
Do you have 2 hours?
No.
The world for you, Morgan.
I'll distill it pretty quickly. I think the overall growth strategy is twofold. I think you've seen, and there's some credit here for some of our competitors. Some have been really good at supporting early stage builders and innovation. Others have been really good at kind of bringing in the big name, kind of billboard marquee things to show what's possible. I don't think you can do one or the other. So we've always had this this vision and this kind of strategy of top down, bottom up, meaning in certain industries, particularly in Morgan's and in enterprise, you need to have use cases with established and credible partners. You've seen this in Korea with SK. You saw this with the Project Guardian stuff we did with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, JPM and Citi. You have large, trusted, credible partners validating, right, both the technology and the people they're working with. Because a lot of people, this is not just going to happen overnight. There's due diligence that needs to happen on the tech and on the people that you're working with, or that are working with us, right? So that gives us a validation, I think, and credibility from a top-down aspect, which is very helpful. But that really, just like with everything else, creates that funnel for the bottom up, where the innovation happens, right? For the developers, whether it's a 2-person team or a startup or a fintech or whatever it may be, for us to support them with new novel ideas, right? And those new novel ideas, those new novel applications, particularly like we started in 2021 with DeFi, and now we're doing again with DeFi, that kind of innovation hub is what forces the incumbents to come into our world, to adopt some of the technology, to not flip 180 overnight, but to make incremental shifts towards decentralization, towards digitization, towards the things that we are trying to do. So without the innovation, without the bottom up, without the crypto native stuff, you don't have that magnet pulling the incumbents into our world and forcing them to adopt and innovate. So that's kind of the way I think I'd like to look at it, right? We like to go for things that matter, that are valid, that have validation and authority, but then also wholeheartedly support innovation from the bottom up, particularly in the developer community, and support those innovators from day one.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if Morgan, there's anything to add to that, or pretty much summed it up.
I think it covered it well.
Yeah, nice. What are people missing about the Avalanche ecosystem metrics, subnets? Like, how should ecosystem activity as a whole be viewed? And what are the best sources you'd suggest for this?
So this is something that gives me tremendous heartburn every single day, because Avalanche is not like every other blockchain. So you have an entire industry that is set up, and tons of businesses that are set up that do reporting, that do analysis, that do reports, and a million other things for a single chain, right? One chain, this many users, this many transactions. It's very easy. It makes it very nice for little charts on Twitter to compare everybody. And some people use some data and other people use other data. And if you want my data, then it becomes a game. Avalanche is different, fundamentally different. We are the only people that reduce our main chain or public chain infrastructure numbers, because in essence, the C chain is just a public permissionless EVM chain that anybody can use and anybody can build upon. We have actively taken the biggest, most successful, most used applications off the C chain onto their own Avalanche L1. We did this with DeFi Kingdoms way back when. And I remember this because the chart had this on the transactions. Well, yeah, they have their own chain now. This is the point, guys, right? We're not trying to jam everything into one chain for a terrible user experience and high fees to just inflate numbers. Our point is to create a large ecosystem that is healthy, that is supporting innovation. So we have about 50 subnets live right now. A lot of these subnets, whether they're institutional enterprise, are still private and permission. And you don't see those metrics because they don't easily plug into a Dune dashboard or a Masari dashboard or any other dashboard. Very proud of the work that the TAI is doing, because the TAI actually came to me and said, your metrics aren't being shown. And I said, I know, I can't get anybody to help us here. And you guys are as a trusted third party, are helping along the lines of this. So the way we're hoping this will happen is a lot of these projects are going to start to display their users and their transactions. Some of these are private financial transactions. There's one in life sciences called Remedy that has private health information and private PII. That stuff cannot be public, right? But there's tens of thousands of transactions happening there a day, if not more, tens of thousands of users transacting on that platform. Well, these guys are all going to start to promote how many users and how many transactions on their sites. We can then aggregate all of this to show total Avalanche network users and total Avalanche network transactions, because we are the ones who are focusing on spreading this out to many new chains. So I would urge everybody to look at that. We're in the process of getting that. This doesn't really happen in other ecosystems. So we're trying to make it happen in the easiest way, in the best way, and in a way in which people can credibly check with third parties such as yourselves and others that these transactions and these metrics are there. But I would say total Avalanche network users and total Avalanche network transactions are really the metrics that we should be focusing on.
Yes, so I think this is a good time to plug, and this is a free resource. This isn't a sales pitch, but the TAI, we have worked closely with you to launch frostymetrics.com, which we've shared in the past. So if you haven't checked that out, it's a great public resource for the community to look at the important stats and what's happening in the Avalanche ecosystem. And we just launched the Chill Factor score, which provides a usage score for Avalanche users, which I think is super fun. I'm biased, but it's super fun. I'm going to disclose my score, which is warm. I hope to be more chilly at the next call, not because of its fall and change in seasons, but because I'm more active. But would love to hear your scores if you're willing to share. And then I also want to talk about, there's already been a community for airdrops using Core Wallet's new airdrop tool. And so, how are people reacting to the tool, and, where does this go from here? But a lot of questions again in one question.
Well, I remember when Frosty Metrics launched, because I was about to take off on a plane, and I was like, oh, I want to see what this is. And I like to think that I do a lot of stuff on chain. My team tends to to tease me that they don't think I do a lot of stuff as much as they do on chain, especially the younger guys. But I actually am sub-zero, so I was very proud that I am a lot more degen, I guess, on chain than most people would expect me to be. So,
Impressive.
yeah, that's one wallet. So that's the wallet I play with the most. But there's a couple others. So that actually was a source of pride for me. So I'm very happy there. And yeah, we love Frosty Metrics. It's really cool to kind of see. And it takes into account a lot of user interactions, right? DeFi and NFTs and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
And then regarding the Core Wallet's new airdrop tool, I think it's a building block that Ava Labs was very proud to provide the community. I think it's something that was missing. So people have been using it, projects have been using it. There may or may not be something happening soon. I think that the community will be excited about that might be using it. So we'll just wait to see when that happens.
It's also, I think, like a really good tool. I mean, you mentioned, Heidi, potentially for airdrops, but even like for like large gaming companies that potentially want to incentivize users to come over and try their game, or incentivize users of a different game to use theirs, or vice versa, or even just like some of the enterprise and loyalty rewards programs that different like conglomerates are building out. Like, I think the applications are pretty broad-based, and especially with kind of bringing it back full circle with this native interoperability capability, makes it easier for people not just to track it, but to actually attract users and facilitate the mobility from app to app in this way. So it's all coming together, John.
It's also a great marketing tool, right? So to Morgan's point, if you're a gaming company and you're about to launch an Avalanche L1 for a gaming chain, and you're like, oh, like let's target how many users have used these applications or these different use cases or these different games. We want to airdrop them some of our native token so that they can come and use our new chain, right? So it creates that flywheel, that incentive flywheel, and that user adoption flywheel, so that you can target people, you can target everybody, but you can be a little bit more focused. Projects potentially can say, hey, look, we want to give everybody that's a sub-zero, right, on Frosty Metrics an airdrop, because these people are the most likely to be on chain and do stuff. Or maybe they want to reward their own users, right? We only want to reward certain users that have done this many transactions or have been, from day one. It's really cool to be able to kind of filter through the options of who you can reward and what actions you can reward. So yeah, it's all come together.
Cool. frostymetrics.com. Check it out. So Avalanche Summit 3 tickets in Buenos Aires recently released. Who is this summit targeting, and why might someone want to attend your summit?
You want to take this more?
Yeah. So my first Avalanche Summit was last year, and I heard from so many sources, or so many third parties, that said this is the best conference I've ever been to. And I was like, I want to see this obviously for myself. And so and now obviously I'm biased and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but having gone to so many conferences, and Heidi, you could probably speak to this too, this is like the most unconference conference, in that it is not like a typical convention center. It really facilitates naturally people just kind of coming together, sharing ideas, sharing what they're working on, and really making what I'd like to think are pretty organic connections, and really driving this forward. And to your question around who is it for, it's really for anyone who's involved in the Avalanche community, wants to learn about the Avalanche community, wants to get involved in some way, shape, or form. So it really kind of targets and has content for everyone, from developers to enterprises and institutions to gaming companies, users, founders, and kind of everything in between. And so we really make sure that, and our events team, who's awesome, really makes sure that the content is pretty broad-based and kind of encapsulates all the things that is being worked on from a platform and technological perspective, to infrastructure, to applications, and everything in between. So that is, I would say, on the content side, but also, like, who doesn't want to go to Buenos Aires?
Fair point.
Well, I mean, we did the last two in Barcelona, and I think they were resounding successes. So we're switching it up a little bit. Well, we're going to a new continent, but we've still got the Spanish vibes back there. I mean, ultimately, it's for everybody. It's first and foremost for the Avalanche community, which includes, investors and builders and users and fans and everybody in between. At the end of the day, the cornerstone is just good vibes, good content, good food, good drinks. Just come and have a good time, right? And I think that's what's really exciting about it.
I think that one of the things that I observed that I was really pleasantly surprised by last year was the conference ended on like a Friday at like 5 p.m. And by 8 p.m. people were still hanging out, like talking, exchanging ideas, having drinks, eating.
The drinks help. The drinks help.
But I was like, the conference is over. Why are people still here? But it's just a good time.
That's a true testament to a good conference. If they're not flying out at noon to get back to where they're going to. I'm in Boston, which also is a city that starts with a B. So maybe Summit 4. I don't know. just plugging.
We'll throw that in the suggestion box.
I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but
I think in general also, like, I think we've seen a lot of conferences, especially this year, being focused on the Asia region, which obviously is very important. But I think just historically, and from what I've seen, not many are in kind of Latin and South America. And so, and obviously it's a huge region from an adoption standpoint in terms of the potential for different use cases. And so I think that between both of those things, they were, taken into consideration in terms of the location.
Yeah, that's great. Wishing you great success on that front. We are running out of time. So, how about this, a closing question to the both of you? What would you say went really well this past quarter? What could be better? And where's Avalabs heading? Like, what should we be paying attention to in the upcoming months and the rest of 2024?
You can start, Morgan.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute and it wasn't working. It's like you're trying to press the button. So I'm happy to kick it off. In terms of what went well this past quarter, I mean, I think what went well, and I'd like to think what a lot of us are all proud of is again, just from a tech perspective, the vision finally kind of coming together technologically and really, building out and putting into production the vision for the network from the beginning. And so I think all of that, was really highly anticipated. And obviously there's like finishing touches being put on things and not even like the network obviously will continue to grow and evolve. But I think a lot of that, kind of culminated, this past quarter. In terms of what could be better, I mean, I think we can always holistically, as Avalabs, as the foundation, as the community at large, can always be better about just the way that education, just constantly kind of describing to our partners, which are pretty broad based, right? So there's different levels of understanding, but like, what is the platform? Why should it matter to you? What does this mean for you? And really kind of continuing to hone and repeat messaging and consistent messaging and communication. And really, at the end of the day, it really behooves us to ensure that the community and others know about who we are, like who Avalanche is, what is the platform, what are the capabilities, what are the differentiators, and really kind of having as good of an understanding as possible in that sense. And then from an Avalabs perspective, and John, I'm sure if you, as Chief Business Officer, I'm sure you would have views and kind of want to outline that. But I think from my part, obviously the institutional component is one of the bigger part of the whole. But maybe, John, let me hand it over to you to kind of fill in.
Yeah, I want to echo something that Morgan said. I mean, I think first and foremost, what went well is that the platform team just continuously delivers amazing work day in and day out. They're something to be very proud of. And without them, honestly, we'd be doing a whole lot of nothing. So they're consistently delivering, they're consistently shipping, and I think leading the charge there. So kudos goes to them always. That's the best thing that always happens. I think a lot went well this past quarter will start to be seen in the next few weeks, the next few months, I think, because this also has to do with what I think we can do better. We do really well on the medium to long-term stuff. We set a strategy, we set a goal, we work towards it, and we always deliver on it. I think what we could do better is kind of fill in those short-term gaps. Like the short-term stuff, the stuff that you see really with like online narratives that form in these little bubbles for whatever, 2 to 3 months. They come, they become all the talk, and then they go away. I think we could be more relevant So yes, that comes down to education. I think we could be telling our story better. I think we could be messaging what we're doing and what we're working on better, and kind of smoothing out those gaps between the medium and long-term things that we work on come to fruition and are delivered upon, as we always kind of have. I think we could smooth that out so there's no real lulls. That's something that I definitely think we could improve on, and we should be improving on. And where is Avalabs going? I mean, there's a lot going on always. I think the ecosystem growth team with Morgan and on the institutional side, and enterprise and gaming and DeFi and everything in support of the Avalanche ecosystem is doing a fantastic job. And Avalabs is just one participant in a much larger Avalanche ecosystem. So I think there's a distinction between the work that Avalanche does as a service provider, as a participant among many other participants, and the work that the foundation does to kind of proliferate the adoption of Avalanche. Right. So our ecosystem growth team supports in that, but we're just one team among many, really working hard to grow the Avalanche ecosystem. So a lot of credit goes to a lot of the builders in the space, especially the ecosystem. On the Avalab side, I think you've seen some products that have launched. Ava Cloud is doing fantastic stuff. That's its own business. They're just completely crushing it in terms of bringing enterprises, institutions, and a lot of builders into the blockchain space. Our job on the kind of business development side is to start innovating, creating new use cases, new applications, and new tools, mostly for builders. So a lot of work is being put in there. So hopefully we'll see a lot of stuff come out that's new and that's innovative and that is supportive of Avalanche.
Nice. Great way to wrap it up. Really, really appreciate your time, John, Morgan. Always great to have you participate in these quarterly webinars. I really appreciate you sharing what's happening, what we can look forward to. I think it's really important to share all the successes and what's to come across the Avalanche ecosystem. So with that, we will sign off on the Q3 2024 State of Avalanche Ecosystem call, and look forward to catching up again next quarter.
Thanks, Heidi. See you all in Buenos Aires.
Thank you.